Robust, web-based, and mobile requisition and procurement with enterprise capabilities is here. With Paramount Workplace, you can achieve greater efficiency, transparency, and control. Deploy to the cloud or on-premise. Flexible to be a standalone or integrate with your Microsoft Dynamics and other major ERPs, right out of the box with no customization required. Empower your team with robust procurement capabilities, powerful requisition, mobile requisition app, unlimited routing, unlimited approval rules, punch-out capabilities, vendor portal, multi-company, multi-currency, powerful tax engine, AP automation, invoice capture with OCR, and more. Receive world-class training and support, and scale without additional hidden costs. Over 131,000 users of local, national, and global brands trust Paramount Workplace. Experience what you can achieve.
Please welcome our next speaker, Belinda Allen, a trainer. Today, she will be presenting her session, Save Hours Each Week with the Power Platform. Please stick around after Belinda's session for a live Q&A.
Hi everybody, and I'm Belinda Allen, and welcome to Save Hours Each Week using the Power Platform. I'm going to be your guide today. Now, this is a Business Central session, but if you happen to be a user of F&O, GP, or SL, that's okay. A lot of these concepts will still apply. Just note, if you're using GP and SL, you do have to have a gateway in order to achieve many of the items that I'm going to be showing today. About me, I am a Microsoft Power BI MVP. That's part of the data platform series. And as of January of this year, I hit 30 years in the ERP world. Ugh. So with that, I like to focus my Power Platform information around Power, the whole ERP world. I find that to be pretty powerful. I do want to point out that the Dynamics user group actually has some new on-demand training. So particularly there is a Power BI course for Business Central, so check it out. Another thing I want to tell you about this course before we get started is the demos that I'm going to be using during the actual presentation are pre-recorded, but during the Q&A, I'll have all of these opened up so that we can look at them in a little more depth if you're interested in that. I did that because I have about 3 hours of content I want to show in just 40 minutes. So bear with me on that. Now, this is an ideas session. It is not a how-to session. I'll be happy to take how-to questions in the Q&A part. So if you have a question, go ahead and enter it in the chat or save it for the end, and we'll get it answered as soon as possible. The goal for this session is to save a minimum of 40 hours in a year so that you can go on vacation. Hopefully, we're going to be saving you a couple hours each week. And our agenda for this session, we're going to super briefly cover what is the Microsoft Power Platform. We're going to be covering then how we can use Power BI, Power Automate, and Power Apps to save time. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have time for the Q&A at the end. So let's begin with the first topic. What is the Microsoft Power Platform? Now, the Microsoft Power Platform, this is going to be very brief, and it's going to be answering this question in terms of this session. The Microsoft Power Platform consists of 4 products: Power BI, Power Automate, Power Apps, and Power Virtual Agent. And these 4 products are cloud products, and Microsoft considers them one of their cloud lines. But for this session, we are not going to focus on Power Virtual Agent. Instead, we're going to focus on the first 3, Power BI, Power Apps, and Power Automate. Power Virtual Agent, super cool. I just didn't have time to include that in this session. So what are these 3 elements? And again, I'm going to give you what they do in relation to this session. First, we have Power BI, and it makes data easier to consume. Now, it does a lot more than that, but for this session, that's what we're going to focus on. Power Automate makes things integrate and happen, and we'll talk about more about that later, and Power Apps makes data easier to enter and edit. So this is how we're going to use these portions of the Power Platform. So let's dig into Power BI. I told you that was going to be a fast introduction. So my first idea for using Power BI has to do with creating something called an app in the Power BI service. Now, this is not an app like an app on your phone or even an app like Power Apps. An app in Power BI is basically a group of related reports that you combine together, and they have the same permission levels. And you can give them to permission to them to users in your company, and it's easier for them to consume the data in them. It's easier for them to use, easier for them to navigate. And so I would suggest that you create an app for audit information, and we're going to be doing that now. So I'm going to start. This is actually a browser. This is the videos I was talking about. I've just cut off the browser information at the top. And if you're wondering, I was using Microsoft Edge to do this. In this particular session, I'm going to go in and in Power BI, go to workspaces. So you create an app by creating a workspace. And when you go to the workspace, you'll enter in the name of the workspace and then a description of the workspace. And the description is optional. Now, workspaces have been around for a while. I'm going to go ahead and give it a Dynamics Con logo to mine. But when you create a workspace in Power BI, it does not create a group in Office 365, and it does not create a team in Microsoft Teams. Now, this is my Power BI desktop report that I have for permissions, a very simple one, and I'm going to publish it to that particular workspace. And so as it's publishing, just pointing out, this is a simple table that shows me who has access to what inside of Business Central. So now when I go back into my service, I can see I have the Power BI report and I have the data set for this particular report. In the top right-hand corner, I click Create App. It takes on the same app name. You do have to put a description in for the app, and that's for the users. And oh, by the way, as I'm typing it in there, I want to give a big shout out to one of our global sponsors, PaperSave. So woohoo, yay, PaperSave. And then I may even assign a color and a logo for the app. Now, I picked up the same one. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Apps. And now I can see what the app looks like in the Power BI service. So here's my very simple report for BC permissions. It's a table, that's all it is. And every object in the table is in the filter pane, so I could do filtering. So for example, if I want to see all my object IDs that are 9852, I could type that in my filter and I could see that. And that actually is how I got this information, by creating a web service for 9852. And I can see who has access to it and what they have. And I could even go into things like the object name, and I can type in vendor. And if vendor is anywhere in the name, it's going to display it as options for me to select. Now, I can look at the data on this report by role, by company, and by user. And it's going to show me again who has access to what. And so this is something that could help you out a great deal. And if you create this app for your auditors, then they can actually go in and look at it. And sometimes people within your own company are going to want to evaluate who has access to what. So this is another great way to do that. Let's go to the next slide here, because on this slide, we're going to be seeing this slide a lot. This is our vacation time tally. Remember, we have two goals. Our ultimate goal would be to save multiple hours a week, but our minimum goal is to at least get 40 hours of vacation time in 40 minutes. And so that's what we're doing now. So if we create a permission report like I just showed you, and I'm going to lowball these savings of time. So I'm going to really underestimate the time that it saves. If we just save 10 minutes a quarter, that's 40 minutes a year. And that's 0.67 hours toward our vacation time. So let's keep going and move on to idea number 2. So for idea number 2, we have a collection report. This is an accounts receivable collection report. Now, I know you could get to your collection information in BC, But sometimes it's a little bit easier when you're looking at something that is a little more interactive. So let's go through and do that now. So I'm going to start out by in BC, going to my customers and looking at my balances for my customers. So I could see on this particular screen all of my balances. Well, to create a web service that looks at this information, I'll click Control Alternate F1 to find out the page number so I can create a web service. And this is page number 25. So I'll go in and create a web service for 25. And this is the report I created. And I'm going to go ahead and publish this to that same app that we just did. And we'll play around in the report once we get it in the app. So I'm publishing the report, and notice you can get right to the workspace, the report in the workspace with that link. But let's take a look at it in the app. So first, in the workspace, you can see I have that new report and that new data set. I'm simply going to click on Update App, which is where the Create app was. And I can see now on the navigation pane that that report has been added. I'll simply update the app, and now the app gets updated. That's another cool thing about apps, is you could control the release of information. Now let's take a look at the AR collection report. So here I am looking at all of my customer information, and now I'm ignoring any customer that doesn't have a balance. And if I right mouse click on a number, I can open up a hidden page that shows me all the collection information for that customer. And this is interactive. So if I look at everything that's over 355 days past due, less than company, I could see that information, including contact information. And I could see what filters each of these visuals. Now, when I go back to this page, I can see I have 7 invoices over 350 days. Now, that's my last bucket. Maybe your bucket of people you want to pay attention to is 30 days past due. What I'm going to do is go back to the workspace, and I'm going to create a dashboard. Now, I know many of you have created dashboards, so there's not a lot of focus on the creation of the dashboard, except that I highlight the visual, I click on the push pin, and I choose which dashboard I want. And you can have one or many dashboards within a particular workspace. So I'm going to put these 2 visuals in my Dynamics Con dashboard. And now in my workspace, I have a dashboard called Dynamics Con, and I have those 2 particular visuals. So what I want to do is update the app again. So now I have that one. This time though, I'm going to go to navigation. I want the dashboard to be the first one in the list. So I'm going to move it up on the navigation pane so that for the users of that app, the dashboard will be the first thing that opens. So let's take a look at the app again. Now, when the app opens up, it opens up with the dashboard first. Now, this is something I want to pay attention to. How many customers or invoices are over that? So I'm going to click on the ellipsis on the dashboard and choose Manage Alerts. And now I can create an alert. And the alert is going to be above or below a certain threshold. And you could send this to yourself either by email and then get notified from it in Power BI. Now, this can only be created in a dashboard, which is why I set up a dashboard. And also note, it can only be created, the alerts I'm talking about, with 3 kinds of visuals. The card visual, like you see here, where it gives me a specific number of invoices or a specific amount due. I could have just as easily created an alert on when my amount due is over 100,000. Or a KPI visual or a gauge visual. And the thing that those 3 visuals have in common is they actually have a number that appears. And it's that number that gives us the ability to create a threshold, either above or below. And so that has been created. So let's now tally up. Now I could just go and easily see how many alerts I get. So here I have this collection report, and I'm just focusing on the collection right now. I'm going to say it saves me 5 minutes a week of evaluating, and I know that's lowballing it. So now I'm down to, or up to, 5 hours a week of savings. Now, let's go back and take a look at this alert, because when this alert happens, you notice when I go in, I could see for that particular card visual, the little bell, the alert bell, and the one, meaning I have one alert for it. And if I click on that alert, it's going to open up the notification center, and I can literally see I have 7 items in that. I could choose to go to the tile, and now I have focus on that tile. I could also get an email. Here's the email. The email has a link to the dashboard. I click on the dashboard link. It opens up the dashboard for me and I can see it. There's also a Get Insight link on the email. And if I click on that, it not only opens a dashboard and puts that tile in focus. See the light bulb? That means AI is at work. So Power BI is using some artificial intelligence to try to learn more about the results of this particular visual. So it's going in and it's looking for trends and outliers to those trends. So I could learn more about what's going on with the information that that tile is revealing. And I could use that to help me do some of my collections. So that's pretty powerful as well, being able to do that. We're going to be focused more on AI in a few minutes, but anytime you see a light bulb in Power BI, you know artificial intelligence is at work for you. Let's go back to vacation time tally. So if we factor in that alert, I'm going to say it saves you 10 minutes a week of having to look it up. That's 2 minutes a day. That's pretty low. And now we're up to almost 14 hours saved a year. Let's keep going. Now, I was talking about artificial intelligence by that light bulb. Let's talk about artificial intelligence a little bit more. Sometimes when we're building out, not sometimes, almost always when we're building Power BI reports, we tend to try to build them to support our own theories. And this is a very dangerous thing to do because there's a lot of information to be learned from the data that you're reporting on. So how do we learn what to ask when we don't know what to ask? I mean, you don't know what you don't know. So what do you ask for? And now we're going to use some built-in artificial intelligence in Power BI to help us do analysis. If you have to go to a sales meeting, for example, every week, and you have to report what's going on with sales, well, what do? You sit and you pour over the data and you look at it. So let's let artificial intelligence help guide us. Now, in this video, I am literally using BC data, and I'm using the Cronus sample database, which is very small. So I'm losing a lot of functionality here. I don't have quite enough data points. In the Q&A at the end, if you want to look at some of these artificial intelligence pieces a little bit more, I will not only have this report open up, but I'll have some other reports with more data sets in them so that we can play around with it a little bit more. And I strongly encourage you to do so. Okay, so first up is something called Insights. And we're certainly going to, I have explained the increase and decrease because frequently that's what this is called. But we're not going to be able to see the option explain the increase and decrease. Instead, we'll see the secondary option to it, which is find the distributions. Now, this is a clustered column chart. And in this cluster column chart, I have the periods across the axis and I have item cells in the values. And this could be any number, but we do have to have the periods across the bottom in order for this to be really valuable. But you could make it basically anything with column or structures. If you select a column and choose to right click on it, and I'll show that to you again because I was just talking through that, you get these insights. What it's doing is it's comparing the column that you've clicked on with the column immediately to the left. So if you sort chronologically, you'll be looking at the previous period. If it's descending chronologically, you're comparing to the next period. And it looks for trends and outliers to those trends. Now, I'm going to pause this video for a moment because in this particular sample, what we're looking at in the gray area, we have all of our item cells by period. And then now with Wednesday selected here, I could see the sales that are happening on Wednesdays in the darker color. So I could do comparisons for specific pieces of data. Let's start up again, and I could click around to Monday. There are all kinds of options that are available in here. Now, this one happens to be to find the distribution. Let me show you another column, and I'll show you how we do it. I right mouse click on the column, I choose Analyze, and I choose Find where the distribution is different. Now, had I had more data sets, I would have, in this case, seen Find the Increase. So I'd find what increased from the column immediately to the left, in which case you'd probably want to sort chronologically. Now I'd like to talk about trends and anomalies. So if you have a line chart where you have a date in the axis and you're looking at something like item sales here, you'll get this analytic option on the filter pane. And here you could choose to add a trend line, and that's the dashed line that you're seeing here. And again, this is artificial intelligence at play for us. And if I add in a filter for perhaps the year, I could go in and focus on 2019. And here I can actually see my sales are decreasing if I narrow in my focus. Now I'm going to get rid of the trend line. Note, you could also do some forecasting. I don't have enough data points in this data set for forecasting, but let's look at anomalies. And this is a preview feature right now, so you have to turn it on in preview. And I'm going to pause here as well. Okay, so anomalies are just some of the coolest things since sliced bread to me. I get super excited about data, so sorry about that, but I think this is so super awesome. What's happening is it's using artificial intelligence to create this expected range. So it says, okay, based on everything that's happened in this timeline so far, I expect this to be the upper range for this date and this to be the lower range for this range for this date. And you could literally see these in the tooltip right here. And then it's like, and I expect this to actually be the value for this date. And if the actual value falls outside of that range, then you end up with one of these. It's a little tear shape or a little dot. This is the anomaly. So it's literally looking for things that are outliers, things that fall outside of the information. I was attending a meeting not too long ago when this had only been out like 2 days. And one of the customers that was talking about it had been playing with it, and they had already found a problem by looking at it that they didn't know they had. And they were able to solve the problem just because anomalies pointed it out. Now, I'm going to go ahead and turn the video back on. And as I turn it back on, you can see I can go from anomaly point to anomaly point. Now, I can adjust the sensitivity for the anomaly, and the higher the sensitivity, the more points I'm going to have because it shrinks that range up much tighter and smaller. It's less sensitive. If I lower the sensitivity rate, you're going to notice that the gray area becomes much bigger, and that is the range of the upper and the lower limits. So I have fewer points. So that's a pretty cool thing. Now, this is my favorite artificial intelligence piece, and I got to pause here and talk about this. This is the decomposition tree. And talk about don't know what you don't know, let it figure out for you. My favorite. Okay, on this visualization, you tell it what you want to analyze. In this case, I'm analyzing sales, but a cool thing you might want to do is analyze the growth of your sales instead of actual sales. Who's growing, right? And I also have included in the explain by all the potential things that might be a factor in the sales. So let me turn this one back on. And when you do that, you get your item sales in the visual. And you could click on the plus and you could select any of the explain bys, and it's going to break it down for you. So that's pretty cool. But what if you don't know how you want to break it down? I'm going to pause again so you can see the light bulb right there. We have the high value and the low value. And what this is going to do, if I select high value, and I'm about to do that, it's going to, let me go ahead and turn it back on. It's going to go through all the explain by options and say, all right, of all these, which has the biggest weight to high sales? And it seems to be this particular salesperson using the cash payment method and then using the payment term COD, which that's pretty obvious. So maybe I want to take out one of these two, maybe payment method. And then the year, looks like he sold much more in the year 2019. And then I could keep working my way down the high values and I could see what's driving my sales specifically. Now, if I come back over to the left, and I'm about to do that now, and I select the other salesperson, these options change across the top because there are different things that weighted out that explain the high sales if I choose that customer. So this is an awesome tool to use with the high and low options. And very similar to the decomp tree is key influencers. And this is more of a why, like why is something happening? And I like to think of it as persona. So I'm going to pause again. In this particular case, I'm looking at an increase or what explains my higher sales. Now over here, I have the average line, this dotted line of my sales for all my items. And I'm guessing that this particular desk is a high priced item. But when I sell this desk, it's telling me that my average sales are $4,000 or $4,620 more than any other sale item. Now, if you use percentages, you could see how many times more likely something happens. So I can look at all of my items by this, and I could even change it to, I could click on a particular item on the list and see how that falls in place. And I could even change it to show me what influences lower price sales. And let me go in and click on that one now. There it is. So I'll show a decrease in the sales. Now, the first line, the one that is the lowest in sales, is the thank you line. So I should probably exclude that using filters. So that doesn't skew my numbers. That's why that happens to be exactly the average. But I could see what makes up some of the lower sales pieces. Now, the segments is my favorite area in here. If you pick a segment, you basically get this persona. And I'm going to pause here for a moment. So I know if the customer is not ReCloud, and I know if I'm selling the red swivel chair and the cash payment is cash, that's where my lower sales are going to be. So maybe if my red Moscow chair is not a low priced item, maybe I don't want to carry that item anymore. Maybe I want to get something else. So the fact that you could get personas is pretty cool, and you don't have to even know. So this is a great way using all of these AI tools to evaluate what your data is trying to tell you instead of what you think your data is trying to tell you. So let me go to the next slide and let's tally up our time here. So when we add in artificial intelligence, score, we have met our first goal of 1 week of vacation. So now we got to meet our ultimate goal of multiple hours saved per week. So I'm saying it's going to save you an hour a week if you analyze data. And that brings you over almost to 66 hours a year in time savings. So let's move on to Power Automate. Enough with Power BI. Let's get into Power Automate here. And in Power Automate, what we're going to do is look at the email alert again. Now, remember we had this email us in Power BI to ourselves, but what if we want to email it to somebody else? What do? Well, Power BI doesn't give us the option to do that. It only is the individual user. And we don't want to go around and set this up for everybody because they may or may not even have access to this information. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to use Power Automate to create a flow. So I'm going to create a new flow. I'm going to go to templates and I'm going to look up all the templates for Power BI alerts. And there are a couple, and the one I'm going to look for is right there. Trigger a flow with Power BI data-driven alert. So what it's going to do is every time that alert happens, it's going to launch a flow. Now, while I rename the flow, I'm going to explain a little bit more about flows. There has to be a trigger, something that makes it happen, and then there has to be steps, actions, the things that it does. And in this particular case, the trigger is going to be every time that alert goes off, what do I want to happen? So the first thing I'm going to do is find the alert that I created at the very beginning of this session, which is alert for invoices over 350 days. So when that goes off, everything that follows will be what happens. So I'm going to look for Outlook connectors. And so I'll just type in Outlook and I'm going to look for specifically for the action, send an email. And you can see I have it right there. Now you could do all kinds of things. I'm going to send this to me, which I know is a bit redundant, but let's pretend I'm sending it to 5 different people or a group of people or just the collection department. And now I could put in a subject I'll just put in invoices past due. And then in the body, I can put more specific information. Now, there are things that you can include that come from the data-driven alert as it is. So I'm writing note I want to put how many items there are. So you can see the alert title and the URL here, but I can also include the title value. That's the number. So it's going to say there are 7 invoices over 355 days past due. Now, I would also suggest that you put in a link to the dashboard if they have access to it, so they could see that information. And now I'm letting the people know who have to do collections, hey, you need to focus on these 7 invoices. They are hitting the danger mark and we want to make sure we collect on them. And you could add more steps in if you want to. You could even have it say, if there are 10 of them, email it to somebody else. And if there are less than 10, we'll go. Now, the moment I save this, you're going to see that it already ran. It ran instantly because it saw that data-driven alert was there. So that's pretty cool. Here's the email that I got that tells me there are 7 of them past due. So it's pretty amazing in what it can do. And I don't have to be the one to monitor it and then choose who to send the email out to. So let's look at our tally again. So if we add in that automated email alert, I'm going to say it saves you 2 minutes a day, 5 days a week. We're up to 74 hours of savings. Now I'm going to show you, this time I'm not going to build it, but I'm going to show you one in action. I have a flow built in Power Automate that pays attention to anytime a customer is added into my BC. So let me go ahead and let's take a look at it. And anytime the customer is added, I have it update a SharePoint list, and I would recommend you use Dataverse or SharePoint. So it goes out and it says, hey, look at the customer, and if one's been added, get the row ID. I'll talk about the row ID more in a few moments, and update the SharePoint list of this new customer information. And I would probably want it to do more like email somebody so that they could go through and do the credit check and update the credit amount, and I could do some things like that. So what I'm going to do, I'm logged into BC and I'm going to add in a brand new customer. So this is something very simpler to what you guys experience on an ongoing basis. So I'm going to create a customer called Belinda's Yarn. Something very simple. And I'm going to populate a few fields here. Now note, any field that I put in, I could extract in the flow and I could update other information with that field if I want to, but I'm only going to get a few basic information like the name really, and maybe the customer number. And so I'm going to go ahead and populate myself as the contact. I am creating a customer called Belinda's Yarn. I'm a knitter and crocheter, and like all knitters, I have a big stash of yarn. And there's my customer, Belinda's Yarn. So now that I've added that customer, let's refresh this flow, and you can see that it just ran for me. And when I open this one up, if I go and look at the last step, I can see it only took a few seconds, and it populated it with Belinda's Yarn. So now if I go into the SharePoint list, I could open it up and see Belinda's Yarn in the SharePoint list, and the information could be added here as well. Now, keep in mind, you might want to have some other flows that say, hey, monitor the SharePoint list. When it gets updated, go and update the information back into Business Central. And the same could be true if you did this in Dataverse. So you could have it look at all kinds of information from all points from all points. You have multiple flows. Now, if you do that, I'm going to say, hey, it saves you just 5 minutes a week. Lowballing it again. We're almost at 80 hours. We're almost at 2 hours a week. Almost at, or we're not at 2 hours a week yet, but we're almost at 2 weeks of vacation a year. Let's take a look at the final Power Platform tool, Power Apps. Now, let's say you go to some kind of trade show 4 times a year and you get a bunch of business cards and you have to go back to your office and you have to enter the information in. What if we created an app that entered the information for us? Now, I'm going to do the app, build the app out. I'm going to let Power Apps do it for me, actually. But if with a little bit of customization with BC, you could do it for contacts. Out of the box, I could do it with customers. So here I am. I don't have anything that starts with a C after Belinda's Yarns. So I'm going to open up Power Apps, and instead of creating one from blank, I'm going to go ahead and create one from data. Although I would recommend that you do it from blank so that you have a lot more controls. Power Apps then says, okay, what do you want to connect to? So I'm going to connect to my BC connector. And then I'm going to see all of my out-of-the-box options that I can use with my app. And again, if you use some customization with BC, you can create some of your own connectors or even create some of your own APIs so that you could do some of the connection as well. But this is uncut time-wise, so you're seeing this happen in actual time. So I'm going to find the customer from my list. You can see the other options that are listed here. And I'm going to go ahead and say connect, and it's literally going to start building the app out for me. That's it, building the app. Now, when Power Apps builds an app for you with data, it'll have 3 pages. One will be a gallery, one will be a viewing only page, and one will be an edit where you can edit or add information. This is my gallery of all of my existing customers. This is the edit or the view screen, and this is the edit screen. Now, looking at this, there's information on here that I wouldn't want to be able to hand my phone at an event and say, hey, enter your information. So I'm going to edit this form just ever so slightly and just keep a few basic information, maybe the customer name, the customer phone number, and the customer email. And I'm going to get rid of everything else. But you notice at the top, there's an ID right there. That's that row ID I was talking about. That is a unique field that's hidden inside of Business Central that shows me this customer. Now, normally the customer number, you wouldn't want them assigning that. You would want to make that automated where it looks and maybe creates a new number for you automatically. And here I'm taking the detail form and I am only displaying the same fields. So when you're at an event, you can literally hand your phone to someone and say, here, enter your information in, because a lot of people don't carry business cards anymore. Or you could use some more artificial intelligence built into Power Apps, where you could just take a picture of someone's business card and it'll populate the information for you. And so those will save you a lot of time. So now I'm just giving my app a name, and I could choose a little icon and a little color there for a little bit of flair. Now keep in mind, this is literally real time. This video has no edits in it at all. So I'm building it out live, and I'm even doing typical Belinda going, which logo should I use on my app? So I'll just pick something a little strange and I'll go ahead and save it. And then we'll take a look at the app. So this is saving the app. The app is built. And by the way, I have literally entered information into BC from an app that wasn't even saved yet. Okay, so I'm going to close out the app in the edit mode, and I'm going to go to the app list. I'm going to find my app. You could tell this was live. I'm like, oh, where's my app? So I'll resort by the date it was modified. And I'm going to go ahead and open this app, and I'm going to enter in a new customer inside of this app. And again, like I said, the numbers you would probably want to create your own. So I'm showing you it ends there at the Belinda's Yarn again. I'll click on the add option. I'll enter in the customer number myself. I hand it to someone. They're like, oh, my company is Goofy's Gobbles. Here's my phone number and here's my email address. So I'm going to take it and check it and go, yep, that looks good to me. That looks right. I always use fake.fake for an address. Click on the checkbox, and now I can see that customer in my app. And if I go to Business Central and refresh my data, I just need to do a refresh because I had the window open, I'm going to see that customer was added inside of Business Central as well. You could save a ton of time on some of your entries by creating apps to help you do that. So that's something that is totally worthwhile doing. Let's take a look at our time saving now. So we have hit the 2-week mark of vacation. The customer entry app, if it saves me 2 hours a quarter, that's 8 hours a year. I am up to 87 hours of vacation time available for me. Woohoo! But I want to throw in some other ideas that will get us over the 3-week mark, which also gets us to over 3 hours a week. So just to review a couple of these before we move on to Q&A, If you create a flow that emails customer invoices every week that are past due, minimum 20 hours a week, not having to do that manually, that'll save you 17 hours a year. If you create an app to store collection notes for your AI, either in SharePoint or Dataverse, and you make that available for the reports, you're going to save a minimum of 20 hours a week looking for collection notes and asking, hey, did you talk to so-and-so and what did they say about it? If you like to email surveys to your contacts or your customers, just setting up an email that sends the form from Microsoft to contacts on a regular basis or when a new customer is added, that could save you 20 minutes a week. Easy. Or actually, I put down 2 hours a year. So I was being very low ball on that one. If you implement row-level security for some of your Power BI reports for salespeople, so you create one report, you put it in an app for your salespeople, and you say, all right, I'm creating these roles, and Bob belongs to this role, Nancy belongs to this role, Donna belongs to this role. When they look at the report, they're only going to see what they're allowed to see. So if Nancy could only see things in South Carolina, she's only going to see things in South Carolina, even though she's literally looking at the same report as Bob, who could see California. Okay, so that could save you a great deal of time sending those out. If you have to provide the bank balance to a CFO or a CEO every day, and I don't know a company where there's not someone who doesn't want to know how much cash is in the bank, you could save 5 minutes a day, 5 days a week, emailing that out. And the same is true for providing the VP of sales, the sales report each day. Because a lot of times, the bigger the company, the less likely the VP of sales is going to be diving into the ERP system. Over 184 hours a year saved. That's over 3 hours a week. That's 3 weeks of well-deserved vacation time. So before we open it up at Q&A, I want to thank one more time PaperSafe for being a global sponsor of Dynamics Con, and let's begin the Q&A. Hi, everybody. I'm wearing the only shirt I own.
That's a great shirt, Belinda.
Thank you very much. Hey, Kim, how are you?
I'm good. That was an amazing session. I love that approach.
Thanks. And I'm so glad you're here with me today because as I put in the chat, I'm the Power BI, you're the BC, and we're an awesome duo. So, yeah. Cool. Yeah, it doesn't take much to save a lot of time. Well, I think you're frozen, Kim. Oh, there you go. You're not frozen. It doesn't take much to save a lot of time. And sometimes you don't think about the little changes that you do that can really impact a lot. And imagine if you were doing these changes among 3 or 4 people. I mean, you could essentially save a whole employee. You can prevent from working. I know I have always said to my clients over the 30 years I've been in technology, my goal is to improve your life and your business success. Because if I could do that, your company's going to benefit. And I remember many years ago at a manufacturer, so one of your people, Kim, she came to me later and she said, I thought you were full of it. I mean, she said, that was the hokiest thing I've ever heard anybody say to me. She said, but I now can get all of my payroll taxes done during the work week. I used to have to come in on the weekend. So one Saturday every quarter, I was away from my kids having to do this. And so you literally did improve my life. And so I was like, yeah. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Amy, for liking my glasses. So I wanted glasses with attitude. I don't want to get beeped, so I'll leave it at that. So let's go in and take some questions. I was really excited to see that a lot of people were excited about some of the AI stuff I showed in the Power BI desktop. And the cool thing is it's free, right? It's just built right in.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think I was scrolling through the questions here. It looks like we're going on a cruise. at some point.
Henrik
Like
is
when
arranging a BC training cruise, and
yes.
hey, Zubin, and since it's up in, he picked Holland America as one. I'm hoping he didn't respond. I'm hoping I finally get to see the Northern Lights. I went all the way to Iceland to see the Northern Lights, and I went on a tour so I could be assured. But our bus went one way, another bus went another way. We went to the cloudy area. I could barely see them. The other people had spectacular stuff. So I have to go back to Iceland.
Yep. I think one of the first questions that came in pretty early from Richard was about where you can find some sample reports. And I think Richard also has some challenges on implementing. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so there are some a couple of things. So there are some samples in the app source. So if you go to Power BI Service and you go to apps and select app source, there are some pre-built ones. They're not, they're pre-built by Microsoft. They're not super inclusive. You can switch them over from sample data over to your data. Simply, there should be an option there that will prompt you to do that and go ahead and connect. Your user ID that you log into would, sorry, I was reading a note from Jamie. She gets it, or he, I'm not sure. That's a good name. I like that name because you can't tell. That's why I like those. But anyhow, I digress. Yeah, so your everything is based off of your user ID, your login credentials that you log in, and then you would pick an environment, and then you would pick the company, and then that's how that would work. So there are some of those, but I know Richard was talking about, it looked like manufacturing. I guess did I read that right? He's a discrete manufacturer?
Yes.
So yeah, I don't think they have anything for the manufacturing. I think your best bet for something like that would be to convince somebody to do a session on that with discrete manufacturing and give you some manufacturing ideas. I know Kim and I have been working on some stuff with some manufacturing yeah, so there's a lot of nuances there to be able to see how you're doing it. So check with your partner first is what I would suggest. But beyond that, I think I would like bug some people, I guess, like Belinda Allen, to see if she would do a session with Kim on it somewhere, because Belinda would need Kim's expertise for data. And so, yeah, that could be something that we could do. But yeah, as far as that goes, those would be your first source for getting data like that.
Yeah, and I think too, Belinda, like the Power BI user group and some of the other user groups, Dynamics user group, all of the different user groups, there's a ton of information out there as well. And Microsoft has a lot of great training out there. So I know Richard kind of asked, what's the first step to get his team going? So, you know, especially if you're into Power BI, make sure you check all those different resources. There's some great blogs. I mean, it's almost like, I feel like there's, you know, before it used to be hard to find information. Now I feel like there's so much, sometimes it's hard to pick where to start.
True. And actually, when I say training, let me be very clear about who would get what training, because there are report designers and there are people who go above and beyond report designing that get into the data modeling. So not everyone who does the report designing is going to need to know how to do data modeling. But certainly end users would never have to know how to do data modeling. And I think you would scare off a lot of end users if you went straight to them. End users, their best bet is to use an app. And I'm not talking about Power Apps. I'm talking about a Power BI app and the Power BI service. To use apps, they're simple to use. They work on your iPhone. They work on your Android device, your iPad. Soon they'll be in Teams. So that's what they would need to learn. But actually, Dynamics User Group, Doug, the Skill Up, and if Rich is still on, he can put in another link again for, actually, I think I could do it. I did a BC, although we use Excel files, I did a BC AP vendor training class for Power BI. It's an introduction to Power BI is what it's really about. And so even if you don't use BC, you could do it, because again, I give CSV files actually for the data set. But it's a good introductory course, and it is almost 5 hours of video. So it would take you anywhere from 10 to 15 hours to do if you choose to take the task on yourself. So that would be a great place to start. We don't tackle every kind of data modeling, but it's $25 and it's on BC data. So, can't beat that.
There's another question, Belinda. Is this available to all users, or do admins need to enable some of these features for their users?
If someone downloads for Power BI, let's start there. So what I showed you, I was showing you inside of Power BI Desktop, which is free for anybody to download. Those features they'd be able to use. The question is, do they have rights to the data? Okay, so that's what that password would secure them out to. But anybody could go in and basically build against whatever data set they have available to them. Early on, I created a COVID data set because I wanted to see what was doing. And then when I was comfortable, it took me a while to get comfortable with my own state's COVID results. I'm really a geeky data person. I was on the phone to them a lot until they were able to explain a lot of variances that I came up with. And when I was satisfied, I just quit following it and just started watching. I approved of their data set at that point. But yeah, so anyone would have something like that. Now, as far, and that would be true basically if in Power Automate and Power Apps too, provided they had the rights to, they had the license to use it, and they had the rights to the data set.
Okay. All right. So,
and let me comment on Sean. He's absolutely right. Power Query is a big part of the journey, as is DAX. And so both of those are skill sets you'd want to know. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to go right to the next one from Paul there.
Okay.
So, I've read that not all Power Automate triggers are available in the SaaS BC. Will be available with our BC that is 99% certain to be on-prem. Is there a list showing a comparison or some description of what will be missing?
Oh, that's a good question. And I do not know the answer to that, Paul, but here's what I do know. I believe with on-prem, because I'm assuming it's BC and not NAV, because you said BC, that you could create APIs using ALM. Did I use that customization phrase right?
Like AL or an extension.
AL or an extension. You could create an API, and with an API, you do not need to go through the Power Automate service. In Power Automate, you can connect directly to an API and then use the API that way. So an API is one of the connectors. So it doesn't have to be an official part of the service to be able to be used in Power Automate or Power Apps. They basically just created some safe measures. For example, if you have let's say you have a vendor and you are a customer and you want to change just the credit limit, or you want to change the address or something very simple like that, or just change the phone number. That's a good one. You're going into one table and you're just changing that one table. So being able to change that is a safe bet. Sometimes when you get into other aspects, you could get into some complications because you need to make sure you have business rules in place. But APIs should be able to ensure if you create your API, hopefully you're going to be creating it where your API or your business rules are going to be respected, and then you'd be able to use it doing an API. I've done quite a bit of Power Automate and Power Apps using an API.
Cool. Okay, so next question. Do you need a BC license to view the BC, or a BI license to view the BI reports, or is there a way to publish reports to the business? If I have a shop floor user that needs the reports every now and again, do they all need a license?
Okay, well, technically, they do not need a license for BC. Well, I guess they might need a viewer license. You really need to talk to your partner. They do not need a full license. That's for darn sure. So it is a cheaper solution to be able to provide report information. You would need at a minimum a Power BI Pro license for the person who creates the report and shares it, and the person who receives it. So the shop manager or the shop floor person or supervisor, whoever that person is, they would need to have the Pro version. That's the $10 a user a month, because the big part about the Pro license is the ability to share. So you could create everything that they need in Power BI and then let them carry around an iPad or some kind of tablet like that and do what they need to do right there on the spot. And I think that's a pretty powerful way to work. And so I think that's easier, because the learning curve for working in a Power BI app over working in BC is night and day, right? So they could get everything they need to know. And you could even, with some Power Apps license or some Power Automate license, put some of those on your Power BI report and let them do some things directly from the report.
Yeah. And I know you've done some really great sessions where you've shown too, like laying out the reports specifically for tablets,
right?
Which I think is really cool. Like, so that, it kind of makes sense. We have another question. Now, with the recent Ignite announcement of Power FX, and hopefully I said that right, and Power Automate and Power Apps, will Power FX also be used along with DAX in Power BI?
Microsoft said no.
Okay.
Power FX is really more for Power Apps and Power Automate. Power BI is keeping M and keeping DAX.
Okay.
But I am excited about Power FX.
Yeah, I haven't played with that one yet, so that'd be good to learn about that. So Jamie asked a question. You created a Power BI reading data from a website. Where did you get your data for the coronavirus numbers?
Well, a couple things. One, and I did it in a different way. I've done it in two different ways, but in one, if you go into the Power BI service and you go to App Source, there are several, and one of them is Microsoft, but there are several people who have coronavirus reports out there, and you could download the app. That's a great way to get experience playing with the app. You will need to connect. It's a free, and you could just connect anonymously after you get it, because I think it only shows like a month or two at first. But when I first started doing it, I was going through, and this is where I found discrepancies in the numbers. I was going through every single day and getting what they reported in South Carolina, where I am, and entering it in. And then I was noticing like past dates were changing, and I was like, okay, this is looks like someone's cooking the books a little bit. But then after talking with them multiple times, they had to get several people to explain it to me. And then once they did, they were like, oh, okay, we got it. And I think we just got our 2-minute warning, Kim.
Oh, did we? Okay, yeah, cool. All right. I think some people have been answering questions for us in the chat, which is great.
Yeah, I see Kristen doing that. Thank you, Kristen.
Yeah, so that's always very helpful.
And can I do a quick shout out? I in the recorded part, I thanked PaperSave, but I'd also like to thank Paramount, and PaperSave are now part of Parasoft. So thank you, Parasoft. Okay, go ahead.
Awesome. Let's see. Then I just wanted to, let's see, I think we had one more question. Can I put my Power BI reports in my BC?
Yes, you can. And there are a couple of different ways to do that. And you can even, if you put in the filters right, you could even have BC do some of the filtering on the reports for you. So I don't have all the detail on how to do that here, but go to Microsoft Docs and look up for BC, because there are interconnections. Power BI They continue working on making it work with all of the Dynamics product inside and out, and all of the Power Platform as well. And I'm so excited that you guys were excited about some of the things you saw. In the last 20 seconds, I just have one request. If you would write, if you saw something cool that excited you, can you write it in the comments so I know what resonated? Because I can't see your faces. Thank you, my friend Kim.
Oh, thank you. Always a lot of fun. I always learn so much from listening to you talk.
Oh, I learn from you all the time. So
thanks, everyone.
bye.